Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Welcome back to episode 65 of Bengals On The Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. Who's the best 65 for the Bengals? That's not what the show's about. Just leave your comment. Is it Eric Steinbach, Alex Kappa, Clint Bowling? Do they all play guard? It's Max Montoya. That is the answer. But make a case for someone else if you want to. There was another guard in the 90s. Doesn't matter. This is the free agency preview show from my perspective. I know I'm sure Dave Lapham's talking about free agents right now. I know Malik Wright and his crew have done free agent previews and have talked about free agents. I've kind of stuck with the draft. We did a free agent mock offseason, and then we led right into the draft right after that. That was a couple months ago at this point. You can go back and watch it. I bet it's still okay. But players have signed. Players have been tagged. Things are different. We know what the cap situation is now. The Bengals have tagged T. Higgins, but we know what we're working with at this point, and we know how much money they have to spend. You could rough estimate 40 to 45 million in cap space dollars, which can get them a lot of players, a lot of good players, or a few good players, few elite players, depending on how you want to spend that money. How do the Bengals typically spend their free agent money? All things I will talk about as we go over what I think I know, what I think I believe to be true, what I believe this team, what their plan may be in free agency, share some things with you that I've heard while we go over a free agent spreadsheet that I've put together with Jake Lisco, Mike Santagata, Bengals Sands on Twitter, James Rapine, and Neil Engelberger, who does a lot of data collection for me during this time of year. But we get together every year. We put together a free agent spreadsheet. We'll put a link down in the bottom here in the description so you can use it as we go through free agency. That starts on Mondays, the legal tampering period at noon. Teams can start to agree. Technically, they're already talking. You know this. Everyone knows this. But they can start to agree Monday at noon. It doesn't become official until Wednesday at noon or 4, whenever the league day is on that. Doesn't really matter because it gets announced all throughout. So Monday, we have to be ready. This is the Friday episode leading in for the weekend of everything I believe. Let me pull up this spreadsheet that I have, and I'm going to talk through it while I talk through what I think the Bengals are going to do. So this is a spreadsheet that we do every year. And again, you can follow along throughout the next few weeks and a couple months as free agency dwindles with each wave. But if you look right here, you'll see Jake, Joe, James, Mike. These are the guys I all listed that do great Bengals work out on the internet. And we put our tiers together and compile them into one tier ranking, which allows us to rank these free agents. And we have all the information here from how many snaps they played last year to what age they'll be at the start of the season. We have a projection for their deal here, courtesy of PFF. Gives us a good idea of who we can look for, who we can target in free agency, who fits the Bengals mold. The guys that are in gray have been signed, or they have been franchise tagged, so they're off limits at this point. And it leaves Chris Jones as the top guy here. Before we get into too much of the players individually, I do think there's a few things that we need to be aware of with the Bengals when it comes to free agency. Number one, now these aren't my opinions, these are things they do. Anyone over 30, tough chance they're going to be able to sign them. They're not usually interested in those guys. In fact, it's usually under 28. What they want to look for is that second contract player that they can find at a value, and maybe he's 25, 26, 27 years old. 28 would be the latest, but even those guys turn into maybe 2-year deals. 29, 30, you may get a guy for 1 year, 31, like Riley Reef. It'll be a 1-year deal. So do I think they'll be in the sweepstakes for Chris Jones? I do not. 30 years old, how much money he'll get paid? They probably would not even entertain it. Christian Wilkins, he'll be 28.7, at the start of the season. Again, they'd probably see it as at most give him a 3-year deal, when I think another team will probably offer him a 4-year deal. Plus, he has the same agent as T. Higgins and Jesse Bates, David Mulugeta, which means that he's probably going to want a 2nd year guaranteed. And the Bengals don't do that. And this is not my opinion. This is their history. So we could probably go right off these guys right away, scroll down just a little bit and say, okay, let's be a little bit more down this list right here. I want to keep Saquon Barkley up at the top, and we can talk about Barkley real fast. 27.6 years old. The drop off for running back is typically 27 to 28 years old, right where Joe Mixon is, why we've talked about Joe Mixon so often, and why the Bengals, in my opinion, this will be my opinion, the Bengals will move on from Joe Mixon pretty quickly in the free agency, if not right when it starts. Barkley being 27, I still think he's a good player, but again, can you offer him a multi-year deal, or is he taking a 1-year, $10 million deal? If he is, then maybe the Bengals get involved in something like that. I don't think it's a non-zero chance. I do think there is maybe 5, 10, 15% chance that they could get involved in something like that. But we're going to scroll down further, and we're going to say here, we're going to start with our own DJ Reader. I think the Bengals would like to retain DJ Reader. I think they are working towards keeping him, even though he is 30 years old. I think that's somebody they know, somebody they're comfortable with. But what it means is they're likely offering him a 1-year deal, which means he has the offer. He can go out in free agency and see what else is out there. If another team offers 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case may be, what is DJ Reader going to choose? He's going to choose one of those other teams instead. If he's only getting 1-year deals out there, 1-year offers, or maybe his rehab, they're waiting on his rehab. They want to see him pass a physical or pass a test before they'll sign him. Then he probably will take that Bengals 1-year deal and will be back in Cincinnati for 2024. I think when we scroll down just a bit after that is when we get to the interesting guys that we could probably talk about here for what the Bengals typically like to do. And is it Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry? I don't think it is. Is the best guy here is Xavier McKinney, the safety from the New York Giants, 26 years old, projected to get about $13.5 million right here. That could be in their range. 30 million guaranteed, that could be in their range. Again, I don't know if they would do a second year guaranteed, but maybe the money's not out there. If you've seen the safety class as a whole, which I do have a tab for that, the safety class is extremely strong. It is deep. There are guys consistently being cut the last couple of days, from Justin Simmons from the Denver Broncos right here. He'll be 31 this season, all the way down to Taylor Rapp getting an extension, a 3-year extension with the Buffalo Bills at 26.7 years old. That makes sense for them. They're losing both of their guys, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, so they're keeping Rapp to replace one of them. But that is the range you're looking for, and I do believe the Bengals will be looking for a safety in free agency. And why? And I think it's some of the miscommunications they had. I think it's some of the concern that Dax Hill would probably be better in the box, probably be better at slot corner. And they're going to try and get somebody that is a free safety. And we've got them listed here on the left side here, just in case you're like, hey, how about Kyle Duggar, who got transition tagged? He's more of a strong safety. I think that would be redundant with a Jordan Battle. You may say, hey, how about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? He's played a lot of slot, and he has played some free safety, but he's played a lot of slot and nickel corner, and that would be redundant with Mike Hilton. So I don't think those guys fit, but I do think Geno Stone is an amazing fit and would be a perfect free safety for them. And if he's projected to get $6.5 million right here with only 7.3 guaranteed, that screams Bengals all over it. And he's only 25 years old. This is exactly how they signed Von Bell when he was 25 years old, leaving the New Orleans Saints. So I think this makes a lot of sense for them. I think you could even go down to guys like Julian Blackmon, to Jordan Whitehead, to Deshaun Elliott, Alohi Gilman, Jordan Fuller. So there are a lot of free safety types here from 25 to 27 years old that I think would fit the Bengals very well. And I think if they're going to spend, other than DJ Reader, which they could spend 10 to 13 million on in a 1-year deal, I think the free safety may be their second position that they go and try to fill. Now, if they miss out on these top guys and they're still sitting there, and it's Mike Edwards at 28 years old, or if it's Jeremy Chin, who's more of a strong safety, but he has the athleticism, he's a lot like Dax, so maybe it's redundant, but maybe it's a Darnell Savage. Maybe we're getting down to the late tier 3, tier 4 players. I can see them getting mixed in with those guys as well. Kevon Wallace, Terrell Edmonds, and Ashton Davis all again fit that role. of a guy that maybe he is a third safety that you use to get Dax more reps, more time, more veteran stability next to him in order to develop the way they need him to develop. And if you look all the way to the right here, we do have free safety snaps versus slot snaps versus box snaps. Box are strong safety snaps. So you can really get an idea of who would fit the best for the Bengals. Did you see Justin Simmons over here with over 1,000 free safety snaps for the last 2 years? The last 2 years data. And Alohi Gilman being over 1,000 snaps as well. I think Gilman fits a lot, but to me, he's very similar to Jordan Battle. So I would like somebody more like Geno Stone to take that role. I think Geno Stone to me is the guy I want. So next on the list, well, we got sidetracked off of Xavier McKinney and talked about safety completely. Michael Onwenu, we got him listed as an offensive lineman. Is he a tackle? Is he a guard? He's 26.8 years old. We've got him as a tier 2 player, which is a strong starting player in the NFL. I think most teams are going to see him as a guard, and I think the Bengals probably would view him as a guard. Now, if they see him as a tackle, great. I think he's the only clear upgrade over Jonah Williams in this free agency class, which makes things tough. Because if you're going to give him, and he's projected right here at $14.5 million, $33 million guaranteed, he pretty much has to play tackle for you. And it takes you out of the running for drafting a tackle in the first round in a historic class where you don't really want to be out of the running. Honestly, if all things are equal, I want them. I think the Bengals want to, and I want the Bengals to draft an offensive tackle at 18. Get a guy with high upside, with youth, that isn't going to cost you a whole lot of money like these guys would here in Jonah Williams and Michael Onwenu would cost. So I don't expect it to happen. I expect he's viewed as a guard. But again, this could be a situation like Orlando Brown Jr., where the Bengals said, you can come play left tackle. While all the rest of the league thought you were a right tackle, you can play for us and we'll get you on a deal. If Michael Onwenu goes out there and only finds out that teams view him as a guard and the Bengals do view him as a tackle, that could be that situation where he gets a deal here and is able to play right tackle for the Bengals, and that frees up your draft. So it's not a negative thing, I don't want to paint it that way. And as you see here, as we're going down the list, there's a lot of these guys that are 28, 29, 30, 31. If you're asking about Trent Brown, the tackle from the Patriots, he's 31 years old this year. And I don't think the Bengals are going to swim in those waters unless we're talking about a 1-year deal. And then you have to ask yourself, do I think he can get a 2 or 3 year deal out there from another team? If so, then he's probably not signing in Cincinnati. But you want to look in this halfway down tier 2 to tier 3 range, because I think there are a lot of potential gems here. And I think that's how you get Alex Kappa and Von Bell and Mike Hilton and Chidobe Aquzie. All these guys were tier 3 guys when we graded them. Trey Hendrickson was a 2.7, I want to say, when they signed him. Like, that's the range you want to be in. That guy that's 25, 26, 27 years old that can be a fixture for you for the next 3, 4, potentially 5 years, like Trey Hendrickson has been. The only few guys that they did sign that were on the older side were guys like Josh Bynes at linebacker, if you remember, Riley Reef. Those are 2 one-year deals. And then a 3-year deal for 28-year-old Ted Karras and a 3-year deal for 28-year-old Nick Scott. So one of those worked. The other one did not. I expect Nick Scott to be released fairly quickly into free agency. And then I have a couple other guys to talk about here, and we'll get to the positions. I'm going to talk about a few Bengals players, things I think they'll do. At corner, I think they want a 4th corner. I don't think they want to necessarily, while they want DJ Turner and Cam Taylor-Britt to be their starters, right? But I think they have to protect themselves a little bit. It's 4 years in a row now that the 4th corner has had to play a lot for this team, whether that was Eli Apple in past years, Cam Taylor-Britt 2 years ago, DJ Turner this year. The 4th corner has had to play half the season, every single season, if not more than that. Eli Apple led the corners and snaps for 2 seasons. So that 4th guy is valuable. I think they would like to bring back Chidobe Aquzie, but as a 4th corner, which means you're going to take him from $8 million a year to $4 million, $3 million. It could be even less than that, and probably a 1-year deal. So I expect Chidobe Aquzie to go out and see if he can get a better deal in free agency first. And he is projected to get a better deal. So we'll see if that's the case. We got Cheeto right here as he's brought up. Cheeto and Jonah Williams here as tier 3 players. Cheeto is projected is $10 million on a 2-year deal. If he gets that, then he's gone. So, that is what it is. We will just keep it moving. And he's 29 years old. So I don't think the Bengals would offer a 2-year deal at $10 million to be the cornerback 3 or 4. So I do think they'd like him, though. And if that doesn't materialize, that's how we get him back in Cincinnati. Tyler Boyd's gone. They're not going to re-sign him. We know that. We could see maybe a low-end veteran wide receiver get signed. We could see a running back get signed. I've got a bunch of, as I mentioned, Mixon. I expect Mixon to be cut. Bringing up the running back page here. I did add Mixon just for comparables down here. He'll be 28.1 week 1 of the season. If you want to know where that ranks in terms of age, that is on the upper end of it. Most of these guys are 27, 26. Henry is 30. But again, you got 27, 25, 26, 26, 27. So there is some youth options available. I also put up the pass blocking grades, the elusive rating from PFF, and the breakaway percentage on PFF compared to Mixon, who is a below average pass blocker and just slightly under average in terms of breakaway percentage and elusive rating, and that's in terms of the free agents. When compared to the rest of the NFL, he's below average. But there aren't too many guys that are clear upgrades to a Joe Mixon. I think the best solution here is to find whoever's the cheapest guy. If you want a veteran like Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 25 years old, and maybe we're talking $2 million a year, you save 6.1 on Joe Mixon. I think that's the way they can end up going, and then drafting another running back to pair with Chase Brown. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's the direction we'll be going. The next one is defensive tackle. And the hard part with defensive tackles, let's say they don't get DJ Reader back. Where do they spend that money? Where do they go? I've got a potential gems here on this page here that eliminates everyone over 28 years old. So 28 being the highest here. You see Robert Hunt being 28. And we want to look for the guys that are very similar to the guys I mentioned earlier that the Bengals found for second contract guys, the Hendrickson, the Bates, the Awuzie, the Hilton, right? The Kappa. That's the area they would like to play in. So what does that really look like for us in terms of the best players available? Barkley, Huff, Jacobs, McKinney, Onwenu, Hunt, Jonathan Grenard. If we're looking for a defensive tackle, though, or an interior defensive lineman, the first guy on this list doesn't come until you get to Teair Tart, who's number 35 on this list. He's a tier 3 player. And he only played 378 snaps last year. He was waived from the Titans, claimed by the Texans. The Bengals did put a claim in for him as well. I could see them being interested in him. But again, we're talking about a major drop-off from a guy in DJ Reader to a Teair Tart. And the projection for money there is still $7 million a year. So is that worth it? I don't know that the Bengals will see it that way. We'll see if Tart even gets that much money after being waived last year from the Titans for character and effort questions, I believe it was. So, I don't know that that's the that's the path. But as you keep scrolling down this list, if we're looking for somebody that's in that second contract, there again is not another defensive tackle. I think the next guy here, and if I'm going off memory, there we go. Interior defense, Javon Kinlaw, who is 26.9, he'll be 27 this year, and Raekwon Davis, the nose tackle, 6'6", 6'7" guy, played for Miami, I believe, out of Alabama, 27 years old. They're tier 4 players. They are complementary players. They're role players with some youth. They can turn into better players in the right system if the Bengals see it that way. We're talking about a $5 to $4 million projection for Kinlaw and Davis, respectively. Is that something the Bengals would need to pivot to? I believe that is more likely. That is more in their range of where they probably want to look. And I think that's a fine player if you can't get DJ Reader back, or if you're concerned with his injury, if you end up with a Raekwon Davis. My biggest issue here, though, is that it presents a situation where you better be ready to draft a defensive tackle in the first 2-3 rounds. How far can you let it go if you don't get a top tier guy in free agency and you're left with Raekwon Davis and BJ Hill and Zach Carter? You better be ready at 18 to take Jerzon Newton or Byron Murphy and then come back in round 2. We did a review on Braden Fisk. I think that could be a fit. There's a whole host of them, though. There are some good 3-techs in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounds this year. So it'll be an interesting thing to develop there. I know we all may say even right now their biggest needs are probably right tackle, defensive tackle. But are there enough guys to fill those spots? I don't know that there is in free agency, and it's going to leave it to the draft more than likely. I do want to go over some of the offensive linemen real quick because, and when you being the top guy, we don't know how he'll be viewed. The next guy here is Jonah Williams at offensive tackle. We know him. That's not going to happen. He's going to be gone. The next guy is a left tackle. We have him listed because that's where he's played most of the time. But can he play right tackle? He has in spots for the New York Jets, former really high pick out of Louisville. Mekhi Becton, who was drafted by Frank Pollock, Bengals now offensive line coach. He's only 25 years old. We have him as a tier 3 guy, but really it's a lot of upside there. He's never been consistent. He hasn't been healthy. He hasn't really even been good the last couple years we've seen him playing. It's really an upside shot in the dark, roll of the dice, whatever phrase you want to use here, for a 25-year-old that has all the size and ability. If you can keep him healthy and get him on track and get him where you need him to be, you might get a solid or good player, but it also may just be a bridge to get you to pick 18 to draft an offensive tackle. And then, maybe it's Troy Fontenot out of Washington. And you say, okay, we got Becton and Fontenot, and we're going to say whoever wins that job, let's say Becton plays really good. You sign him to a veteran deal 1 year, I believe $5 million he's projected at, really cheap. And then Fontenot can play guard too. And now you have 5 good starters at guard for at least 1 year, or on the offensive line for 1 year. I think that makes a lot of sense. To me, we're not talking about too many guys that are young with starting experience. Chuks Okorafor signed with the Patriots after being cut from the Steelers. I was interested because he started and he's 27. If you're looking for Jermaine Illuminor, he also has David Mogoleta as his agent, but he might be in the lower tier where that may not matter. He is also 29 years old. So if the Bengals did sign him, I think at most it would be a 2-year deal. And do you think he can get better than a 2-year deal out there? There's a chance. So he's not listed with the potential gems, but I do think Jermaine Illuminor could be one of the guys they target for the right tackle job to be a bridge guy until you can draft your future starter. Last position I'm going to talk about, and as we look at I want to stay with the potential gems here. I think the Bengals would rather stick with this, is tight end. And yes, Hayden Hurst was released. CJ Uzomah was released. I think if any of those, it would be Hayden Hurst on a 1-year vet minimum deal, but you would probably wait until after the draft to even do that. I think he'd be a fallback plan if you don't get your right guy, because I do think they want to bring back Drew Sample. I do think they want to bring back Tanner Hudson. Both of those guys should be cheap. Hey, even Hayden Hurst should be cheap. So even if you brought him back before the draft and then drafted your guy, you get to camp and you go with all 4. That's a good room that you haven't had in a long time. Instead of Mitch Wilcox and Tanner Hudson and Irv Smith being your 2, 3, 4, you would have a much better group if you're able to get Ben Sinnott in the 3rd round to pair with those. But as we look for tight ends and look for who are the top guys, Noah Fant's going to be the first guy here at number 18 on our list. He's a 2.9 tier. He's 26.8 when the season starts this year. Projected to get $9 million a year with 15 guaranteed. That is not out of the realm of possibility. The Bengals for $15 million guaranteed, that's nothing. Yeah, it's more than the first year. But if you're going to bend it a little bit, this is, in my opinion, a easy pill to swallow. You're not talking about a whole bunch of money. You're not talking about 30, 40, $50 million in guaranteed money like some of these guys are projected to get here on the right-hand side. $52 million there for, who's that, Robert Hunt? Man. So, I do think Fant works a lot. His former first-round pick, still young. You can get him on a 3-year deal where he plays for you for 27, 28, and years 29. Again, makes a ton of sense. Let's see who the next guy is and see how far down the list it gets when you're looking for somebody with some youth. And for us, it's Colby Parkinson, he's big enough to be the Y tight end and be a blocker. He wasn't exactly Will Dissly, who I think is just over 28. So is Drew Sample and Tanner Hudson, to be honest with you. So they'd probably be 1-year deals anyways. But Colby Parkinson can almost be your every down tight end, but I wish he was better. Is he the guy that's in line? Because I'm talking about his first 4 years. Is he the guy at 25.7? If you subscribe to the notion that tight ends get better in their year 26, 27, 28, like that's their peak, their second contract value buys, Colby Parkinson might be the guy that's worth looking for that position and for that jump in year 2. Other than that, it's a pretty bleak list other than Harrison Bryant, who I would put in the same situation. He's more of an athlete receiver than Parkinson is, in my opinion. He played for the Browns, and he's 26.4 years old. We're talking about these guys should probably end up getting a $2.5, $3 million deal per year. Not talking about a lot of money, but I think that's what we're looking at for tight ends in free agency. Fant, Parkinson, and Harrison Bryant, along with maybe a Hayden Hurst, or maybe it's just Hayden Hurst, Sample, and Tanner Hudson. And then you go into the draft and you get your guy that way. So I know these aren't very exciting positions. I think the best players they may bring in are DJ Turner and then a safety. Who's that safety? I think Geno Stone would be a great fit. There's a bunch of them, though. There are so many that even running down the list, I feel like I'll name 8 to 10 guys that I think would fit. And I think I probably did when we went over it. But I think those could be their 2 biggest gets. At corner, is it somebody like Dane Jackson or a Christian Fulton from the Titans from LSU? I think both make a ton of sense. Amik Robertson from the Raiders, I think he makes a ton of sense as well. We're looking for guys that have inside-outside versatility and are still young. And I think those guys fit the mold for sure. The most interesting one to me is going to be running back, because I think there's a lot of guys that you can take on. I think safety and running back are the deepest, linebacker as well, are the deepest in free agency. And if you can take advantage of that and get guys at values that can present upgrades, you may sign 2 safeties. If you're moving Dax to the corner position or anything like that, you may want a starting free safety. And then you don't want to go with just Tyson Anderson and Dax as your backups, right? You would go with maybe another veteran, because I don't think you want to draft and add more youth to that room. But yeah, this is what we have here. I implore you to click the link for this, dig around, watch it as it goes on Monday, and see how these players unfold. And yeah, the link in the description below here. So to recap, I think the Bengals are going to try and extend DJ Reader to a 1-year deal. I think they're going to move on from Joe Mixon. I think they would like to bring back Chidobe Aquzie as long as his market doesn't get hot out there. If it does, they'll look for a veteran corner to be the corner 4, just in case anything happens and he has to play, which I made the case that those guys are going to play. You have to have 4 corners in today's NFL. I think they'll move on from Mixon and add a veteran running back, probably low-end guy. I'm not aiming for Derrick Henry and things like that. I don't think that's where they'll play unless the value's there. The Bengals, if one thing's true, I think they go into free agency with a plan. And if a guy or a position grouping is not getting the money out there that they expected or that the player expected, the Bengals will jump into it afterwards. That was the case last year with Jermaine Pratt. Linebackers weren't getting paid. They reapproached Pratt like, hey, this deal is still good, right? And he took it. So, we all thought Pratt was going to leave at that time. And the linebackers didn't get what was expected out there. And then Orlando Brown Jr., same deal. I already talked about how that went down. And I could see something like that happening at safety, which I do think that's where they're going to target and attack to try and help them fix this defense, because the position group there is super strong. There's a lot of starting safeties, a lot of even third safeties. They should be able to come away with one, no matter what you think of Jordan Battle or Dax Hill. Getting a proven starter, or at least a guy that could rotate, would be huge for this defense. And getting Dax to get better and getting him to play like he should, and getting him into the positions where he looked his best. So I think that's one of the things where they can look at that position grouping and say, yes, there's value there. We can get a guy here. And I'm hoping it's a decent name. I hope they don't go too far down the list there, because I think they could get, and I don't think it's like Justin Simmons at 31 years old, right? I think it's maybe Geno Stone starts higher, maybe Xavier McKinney, but I think it's Geno Stone and under if you're looking at the spreadsheet. But there's a lot of guys still. Defensive tackle is going to be the hardest one to accomplish, which is why I think they are honing back in on Reader. But there's a few other guys down the list that I think are 28, 29, 30 years old, whether that's a Grover Stewart at 30 or a Maurice Hurst at 29, that makes sense for. And I don't think either guy is like a D tackle 1 or even a D tackle 2. Maybe on the line of that, you have BJ Hill for that. So it would still leave defensive tackle as a position of need in free agency. And then right tackle, I think we're looking at a 1-year deal for a guy, whether it's Jermaine Illuminor or a Mekhi Becton, and maybe something crazy happens there, and it's a 1-year deal for Trent Brown or a multi-year deal from Michael Onwenu. That'd be the crazy one, which I don't expect, but we didn't fully expect Orlando Brown Jr. at all last year until he was out there for a while. So that'll be the interesting position there. How do they fill that? Is it just the draft for right tackle? It kind of feels like that to me, and taking advantage of a strong class, which they should do. And then tight end. I think they could end up just bringing back guys they know. Or do you go and spend most of your money on Noah Fant, Geno Stone, and DJ Reader, and then fill the rest in? Fill the rest in with lower tier veterans that aren't costing a lot of money that can still help you. I think that is a solid plan. And I'm not, again, these may not seem like the championship window type of attacks that the Bengals need to make. I'm with you. But just because I'm projecting this doesn't mean I agree with it. I think they have a lot of money. I think they should be going for the best guys possible. I don't care if Justin Simmons is 31 years old. He's still really good, right? Like, so I don't mind going for those older players. The Bengals definitely do, or have in the past. I should always say that. They have always done these things until they don't anymore. And they've been slowly turning the page into the future every year, shocking us in different ways in free agency over the last 4 off seasons. How will they shock us this time? What's your projection? I want you to leave a comment on, I don't want you to, no, you can list the top guys, but I want you to list a player that you think the Bengals will sign in free agency. Call your shot. And I want to see if anyone gets one right here. I might have something to give away. In fact, I have got things to give away. So in the comments, if you're still watching, tell me who the Bengals sign and call your shot. This is Bengals on the Brain, episode 65, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. And when we talk again, I'm pretty sure the Bengals will have somebody signed and we'll have something to talk about in more detail. Until then, hooday.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.